Welcome, everyone. This is a live video broadcast as part of our Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to be with you. This is a 60-minute, very special program with Julianne Turner of Conscious Shift. We're going to be covering a lot of very valuable ground today. I know you're going to enjoy this program. A quick introduction to Humanity's Team as we get started. In Humanity's Team, we see that there is only one presence, the divine, and see that we're all emanations of the divine. It doesn't matter how far our lives may be from reflecting this truth, it is still true. Our invitation is to live in communion with the divine and be an authentic expression of the presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. We don't need to be perfect or even excellent. We're invited to simply receive God's love and be an expression of that, each in our own way. We can be intentional about this so we live this way each day, and when we do this together, we create the world that we know is ours. Okay, concerning today's program with Julianne, I'd like to invite you to share your questions and comments by placing them in the chat window. The sooner that you do, the better. This way we can make sure to get to your questions and comments before the hour is over. Things that come in the last 10 minutes we often don't get to. I'd like to extend an invitation to those of you who receive value from our weekly programming. Our weekly programs cost us about $1,000 to produce each week, and we provide these programs free to the public. If you find value in our programming, we invite you to go to humanitiesteam.org, our website. At the top of the site, you'll see a little yellow donate button. You can click there. We're also placing a link in the window here in the chat window. And let me just thank you in advance for your generosity. Also, I want to thank the recent donors to Humanity's Team indicated in the slide that we're putting up. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to read a brief introduction for our special guest now. Julianne Turner is the founder and the CEO of ConsciousShift.me, is the best-selling author of Genius of Genius, and is a thought leader in the global shift to creative consciousness as executive producer and host of Global Conscious Shift radio show, which has about 680,000 subscribers and growing. And she's a world authority on the master creative process. Julianne guides visionary entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and world changers across the globe to impact the world by sharing their signature genius and to live to their highest potential. One of Julianne's important guests said this about her work recently. Oh, I see, Julianne, you are here to help visionaries suit up and adjust their goggles as their trajectories and soar off into their divine journeys. Which is a nice way of describing Julianne's work. She is a great friend and supporter of Humanity's Team and Global Oneness Day. And welcome to the program, Julianne. Great to have you with us.
Steve, it's such an honor to be with you. And as always, just so honoring what you and Humanity's Team and Neil's vision has done. And it's time for all of us to suit up and adjust our goggles, don't you think?
Yes, it is. I'm gonna go into that, just this whole genius of genius and its origin and that. But before I do, Julianne, just as we were chatting here before the program, we were talking about kind of this moment that we're living in, this moment that's calling all of us to action and to come down on the field and be involved. Do you want to just share your inspiration about that?
Well, I do believe, as we were talking, Steve, that in this changing world, now is the time for all of us. We're all being called forth to share our divine genius. And, what I've run into, and you may be familiar with this too, Steve, is that sometimes people will say, well, I'm not a genius, right? What do I have to offer? And in my work, what I've discovered, and it's so aligned as it would be with Humanity's Team and Neil's work, all of our work around universal principles is that they align. When you're talking about truth and universal principles, they should align in different dimensions and different levels. And so, I was actually guided back to the genesis of genius. That's why it's the name of my book series. And what I found was in tracing back through science, philosophy, religions, all the major belief systems, all the way back to the earliest known sacred writings of humankind, which right now are the Vedas in Sanskrit. And that is the language from which all of our languages come. And in the Vedas, they're actually all about the master creative process. Okay. And in the Vedas, I found the origin, the root word, the origin of the word human. And it is Manu. And it means he who imagines, he who creates. In other words, that's who we are as humans. We're creators, we're children of the Creator. And so we've been given this divine power, really, to create things. And so each one of us has a unique set of gifts and ways to offer that creation in the world, to create and contribute wonderful things to the world, even in small ways and in large ways. And so that is our identity. And so to share our genius, our gifts, our uniqueness is what we're meant to do. That's who we are. That's our entire being. So to be able to express that and contribute to the world our gifts, that's our contribution to oneness. That's our contribution to conscious creation. And so we're all being called in this challenging time to step up, to assume that leadership, that divine leadership, and share what we're here to share. As we do that, we inspire others to do the same.
Beautiful. Well, and so true. Yes, it is. We're one decision away, right, from collectively, worldwide, really creating the world that we want, where we all really fully step into just who we really are. What over the millennia, it's been shared, and of course, most of us grew up, that we're created in the likeness and image of God. And so just really stepping into that the essence of the divine with all of the infinite potential of the divine. And of course, that's what your work is about. And wow, with these nationalist populist movements in this country and elsewhere in the world, surely we're not going to make the progress we're looking for from a tops down. It's going to be bottoms up. It's going to be grassroots. And that's why this program is so important. We're here to review some really inspiring stuff, including tools and classes that Julianne has that are propelling people to their highest potential. The invitation here is this call to action for us all to really step into it, live it, embody that we're an emanation of the divine, feel into it. We're already awake, and to know that and to step into that. So I'm going to go into your work, because again, what's beautiful about your work, Julianne, is you've created books and content that talk about the genesis of genius. And I thought where we could start is that you've created, I think, a fascinating story that just talks about how you stepped into this and why you stepped into it. Can we start with that story?
Absolutely, Steve. And it really ties back to where we started a moment ago, in that I was really guided to this work to follow the master principles and patterns of the creative process, all the way back, as I said, to the earliest known sacred writings of humankind, through all the major religions, philosophy, psychology, traditional science, quantum physics. And what we see are the same universal creative principles at work, the same patterns, the same sequence. And the truth is, we all are born to be able to use that creative process more consciously. Okay. What's happening in the world, though, is, as you described, a lot of people in the world, maybe most of the people in the world right now, are actually not consciously creating. They are actually just responding, reacting to circumstances. Okay, so they see a problem, they see a crisis, they see a threat, and they just react to that. And they're kind of bouncing around in kind of a limited realm, right? Just responding to circumstances, instead of expanding out into the realm of what I call what can be, right? What can we create or imagine? So instead of just reacting to circumstances, if we were just to stop and say, what was it that we really wanted to create again? We would find that we actually share so many things we want to create. We want our loved ones to be safe. We want to be able to make an abundant living. We want to live in places that, we're not afraid to walk outside. All of these things, if we could shift from the realm of reaction and what already exists, the problems, into what can be, and co-create toward those shared solutions, we will be in our divine power. We'll each be sharing our divine gifts, and the world can shift in an instant, Steve. We just need to learn and to act on the fact that we are conscious creators.
Leaders is to make a conscious shift to expand our worldview. Can you talk about that? What do you mean by that?
Yes, it really is a worldview. As I said, and you can imagine it this way, Steve, you can imagine it almost like two spheres. One sphere, kind of at the center, let's say it's kind of a blue sphere, and that is the realm of what is. That's the way most of us look at the world. What is, what we can see and sense with our five senses, and what we already know. Okay, it's pretty important stuff, right? It enables us, you and I, to be talking to one another, right? Hearing one another enables us to be sitting here, and that's important stuff, the realm of what is. However, beyond that, there's an infinite realm of what can be, what we can create or imagine. And when we forget as humans, just looking at the one worldview, the smaller, the limited worldview around what already exists, we have really stifled our creative power. Okay, so as conscious creators, if we can simply say, I'm no longer just going to react, I'm going to consciously create. I'm going to envision with others what could be. What kind of world do we really wish to see? Because we are the leaders. Each one of us is meant to be a divine leader using our divine gifts. And when everybody contributes, the positive power is just exponential. And the world is, and as we say, then we will be creating our world consciously. The truth is, and Steve, I'm kind of jumping ahead. I think to your next, question is, what is the relationship between conscious creation and oneness? Well, we are already in every moment creating our lives, our work, our world, either consciously or unconsciously. With every choice we make, with every creation we share, with every word we say. And the problem is that most people are creating unconsciously. Like we said, we're reacting. And when we do, we're still creating wars, riots. We're creating environmental harm because we're not conscious about our creation. We're not conscious of what we really want to create. And many times we aren't even aware of the consequences. We think that we're not having a role. We don't see that we're having a role in it, but we all are. We're already always, each one of us creating. So then it becomes our divine responsibility to say, how can I contribute differently? And so even when we're responding to people that we don't agree with, if our words, our actions, our choices are negative, even if we feel like we're righteous about it, we're adding to that unconscious creation. And we have, as you said, all we have to do, though, is make a choice. That creative power is already ours. It was given to us at the genesis of genius, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's here now.
It
we
is.
can step into it. And that's what that's what your work is about, and I love it. As you mentioned, it's just this whole foreshadowing, of kind of the world, and the sense that somehow we're disconnected and living unconsciously with the worries and things in the past and things in the future. That this preoccupation is what gets in the way, and where we can just really see that, my God, truly, we are all interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. There's one thing: we're affecting the whole, and the whole is affecting us. And then step into our divine genius, as you call it, to really come into the fullness of who we are and how we can express and how we can contribute and of course, and create abundance and so on is such a marvelous. It's such a great journey. It's the journey for all of us. Let's just talk about this in the context of what you've developed here, Julianne, because you talk about that each of us have a divine spark, or that we're emanations of the divine, and that we all have this. As you talk about the diversity of mankind, you talk about this unique genius that lights us up, that expresses our divine gifts and joy, and that naturally connects us with abundance and represents our unique contribution to the world. I love it, because you're now dropping down to the individual level of what each person can step into. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to, Steve. You've got it. That's it. It drops down to the individual, because we are each one really. When we come into the world, as you know, and as each one of us knows, really, if we tune into ourselves, we do know, I've got certain gifts. I've got certain strengths. There are certain things that I'm naturally good at. Could be physical prowess, it could be, leaping and jumping. It could be working with our hands. It could be cooking. It could be organizing ideas. But each one of us has been given what I call a signature genius. It's a signature because it's as unique as your signature. It's as unique as your thumbprint. And that includes that unique blend of all the gifts and the talents, the expertise, the experience that are yours, and your style of expressing it. No one else can bring forth that blend of gifts and that style of expression in the way that you do. It's really like, and even exactly like, we are all like fragments of a divine hologram, okay? And we know about holograms from Star Wars and, R2-D2 and projecting Princess Leia and all of that. What it is that holograms actually take all the light in a three-dimensional space and collapse it down to a two-dimensional form, a film, like a hologram. And then when you shine light through it, it projects again into multiple dimensions, into three dimensions. And each one of us is like, if you just cut that whole, that wholeness, that oneness, that all of the light of being, and had little fragments, that's us. We're like those little fragments, those little lenses that the light, literally the light of God shines through us, and we project, we're able to share our unique blend of genius in the world, our unique blend of gifts. And it's all a little bit different though, right? We share, we shine, we project an image of the whole, as well as have unique gifts and unique blend to share that no one else can. And so if we don't share ours, the world's not going to have it, right? And so it's really, as we said, not only at a collective level important for all of us to contribute, to share our gifts, but also at an individual level, this is our joy. This is our purpose in the world. This is why we're here. And when we share our gifts, the things that we're naturally good at, the things that flow from our heart and our spirit, and gifts can be spiritual gifts, as we know, intuition, empathy, lots of different gifts in many dimensions. When we share that with the world, we are lit up, right? We're in our joy. And it's such a win-win because we're sharing our highest contribution, we're feeling fulfilled, and the world is benefiting at the highest level from the value that we're meant to bring. And it also inspires others to do the same. So it becomes kind of a divine spiral in a positive sense when we do that.
Yes, it does. So I love it. A divine spiral. It's a nice way to frame it. So as we talk about this, Julianne, you know, what's really neat is you're kind of fusing together two things where we're living into our full potential, but we're also leaders in our changing world, and that it doesn't need to be one or the other, it's both. Can you talk about that? And I just, as you were talking, I was thinking too, Julianne, we've got, of course, incredible models, you know, Christ, Jesus, and Buddha, and Krishna, and we know, and I'm using, you know, the iconic people here in the history of time, but probably all of us know many people that are wonderful models right in our community and in the world today, right? Mandela, Desmond Tutu, we could go on.
That's it. What a perfect segue, Steve, to that, and that is because we each have been given the power to create and these divine gifts, these talents, we are not meant to hide them, right? Even scripture says, you know, that we're not meant to hide our talents, put them under a bushel. We're meant to put them on the hill where our light can shine. We literally are lights in the world when we share our gifts and our purpose. And when we hide our gifts, as I said, the world doesn't have them. And we all miss out, right, on that contribution. So it's not about, this is an important point, Steve, is that it's not about being elected to share your gifts, right? I mean, people who are elected hopefully are sharing their gifts for us, right? But all the great leaders that you think about in the world throughout time have assumed leadership, okay? They knew they already had these gifts and this calling to share, and they assumed leadership. So when we think about Jesus, nobody elected him. He knew his divine purpose, his gifts. He just stepped up and started walking and sharing. The same thing with Martin Luther King Jr. He was not elected. In fact, he was fairly reluctant at the beginning when he was kind of encouraged and kind of recruited to become the lead, you know, person for this civil rights movement. He was actually a bit reticent at first, as some of us are when we're being called forth into the world. But what would the world be like if he had not answered that call? He had not used his gifts. And so all the people you mentioned too, they stepped into their leadership. And each one of us is now being called. Really, I believe what's happening in our world right now is that there's no way to ignore it now, right? You can't ignore that there's tumult and anger and hate in the world now. And the way that we shift that is each one of us making that conscious shift within ourselves first to say, I'm going to contribute what I have. I'm not going to compare to other people or say I'm not as good as, right? I'm going to drop the excuses and I am going to, whatever it is that I have to share, I'm going to start sharing it. And as we start to do that, we're going to see a sea change in conscious creation in our world.
Yes, we will. And I think probably even amongst this community, all of the viewers, I'm guessing there's a sea change that is as part of the journey, even in these immediate weeks and months ahead. So, because that's what this time is about, where we're one decision away from really living the life that we've all wanted for ourselves, for our community, for our world. And this is what we're talking to Julianne Turner about. And she's created these tools for people to really step into it and live it, embody it in a really exceptional way. Julianne, can you tell some stories just about, you've been doing this for over a decade with visionary leaders, Can you just bring in some personal stories here relating to some of the people that you've worked with?
I would love to, Stephen. There are so many beautiful visionaries that I have the privilege to work with all across the globe. And it's hard to choose. It's hard to choose just one, as I'm sure as you tell stories about Humanities Team and all the great country leaders there, and many of whom I know, and their stories are just phenomenal as well. So I think I'll share one short, but I think representative story, and that is a story about a beautiful visionary named Rita that I started to work with when she was in really contributing her gifts in a social worker psychologist role. But it felt really small for her at the time. Even though she was helping change lives, she was really working with employee assistance program. People referred to her. And so what had happened is she was just kind of taking each person as they came. She wasn't able to really use her greatest strengths, work with a certain audience that she was best with, that she felt like she could make the greatest contribution, even though she was helping each person. And she was actually kind of on a treadmill. She was making very, very low wages and kind of being seen as a commodity, if you will. I talk about this quite a bit in my workshop about when you step into your genius, you are no longer a commodity in what you do. Your gifts set you apart, and your purpose sets you apart. So when I started talking with Rita, what we did was really explore her gifts, her unique gifts, get a real good picture of what she's good at, what she loves to do, and her message. What is she here to share with us? And it became clear really quickly that where her purpose and passion was for Rita was around helping women of a certain age going through menopause. She'd had quite a challenge with this transition in her life, physically and also spiritually, emotionally. Every part of her life was affected. And so what we created, her business, her contribution to the world became what she now calls mature essence. Mature essence. And it is not just about menopause, the physical symptoms, although she touches on that and she brings experts, doctors and nurses and people in on those subject areas. But it really is about the tagline is, this is a time to flourish and not fade. The idea that women of a certain age, now it's time for you to fade out, right? Your prime time is over, is not true at all. And so she's working with women all across the globe. And now, because she started some fireside chats that we did arrange for her, she started gathering this global community, Steve, and she is now literally living her dream and speaking all across the globe to women who are now, see the cascade, the divine cascade that happens, they are now stepping into their gifts. And they're saying, oh, this is not a time for me to sit back and, only, and nothing wrong with knitting, but, not a time to just sit on the couch and knit. But it's time for me to actually share some of the gifts that maybe I've never even shared, even in my career. It's not a time to fade. It's a time to flourish. And so Rita is living her dream. She's passing it on to many other women who are doing the same. So that's the kind of creative cascade that happens when you say yes to your calling, yes to your divine genius, and have the courage to step forward and share that with the world.
Oh man, I love that story. What a great, I think people can relate to that story and not fading, as you say, instead flourishing. So that's beautiful. That's the real opportunity here. And everybody, don't we want this not only for ourselves, but for all of the kids and future generations that we grow up this way. And that's what your work is about, Julianne. It's what our work is about. So thank you for sharing in that story just so clearly and in such an inspiring way. I'm going to bring in something here. There's a a question from a listener, but also I want to invite you, if you go to mydivinegenius.com, that's mydivinegenius.com, you can learn more about these programs that Julianne is discussing here. Here's a question that I want to bring into you, Julianne. It's from Loretta in Toronto, and she says, how can we incorporate the genius awareness into our education system? The conditioning of our children begins so early.
What a beautiful question, Loretta. And I've had conversations with so many other visionaries about just this question, and that is our education system really favors certain kinds of gifts over other kinds of gifts. And literally, certain kinds of gifts have been kind of pushed out of the curriculum. And so people who are really good at reading and writing and arithmetic or learn well with that, all important skills, of course, they thrive in our education system. Those who are physically gifted, if they're football players, they thrive. They thrive as well. But dancers and others really are kind of shifted out of the main curriculum in our schools, and they are and artists, art classes, right? Even recess, with of movement for all of us. These things are shifted out of the curriculum and really kind of moved to either private classes or after school programs. And I'm with you. And so are so many of the other visionaries I've spoken with. Even I had a great conversation with Seth Godin about this, that our education system is really still based on a very old model. And so the way to build this in, as you're saying, is from the very beginning. There are fortunately some new models for education, Montessori and others, that start from the get-go, really showing us, having the children experience their creativity and their own creative, following their own creative direction, as we know. And so we've got to stand up, I think, collectively and be leaders and be voices to say to the education system, the institutions, that this is no longer acceptable, not to encourage our children with all of their gifts. And this must be added back into the curriculum from the very earliest age throughout our entire education system. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'm with you. It's essential, and it's actually part of this conscious shift that we need to make for each person to contribute. That must be shared and encouraged in each one of our children.
Yes, it must. And thank goodness, as you mentioned, there's Waldorf and Montessori and things that are bringing innovation into education, but there's so much further that we can go, where we talk about the kinds of programs that you have, Julianne, where we're really stepping into our divine genius and telling kids that this is our essence, this is who we are. And now our opportunity is to activate it and live in the fullness of it and not being foreshadowed by all the crazy things in the unconscious world. So on that note, let me just go into this. You've created kind of a gift for our humanities teammates, and that it relates to what you have been doing here for Global Visionaries, where you're teaching them to prosper and to uncover and activate their signature genius. I think the workshop you've created for us is called a Signature Genius Workshop. Can you talk a little bit about it, and why is this an opportunity for all the people and friends that we're in touch with worldwide, Julianne?
Absolutely. It's such an honor to be able to share this with all H-teamers across the globe. It's called the Signature Genius Workshop, and you can get free access to the workshop at, as Steve said, at mydivinegenius.com, mydivinegenius.com. And the workshop actually kind of takes you through 3 most powerful shifts that you can make to tap into your own genius, to not be stalled by discouragement, obstacles, voices of judgment, either within you or from others, okay, about sharing your gifts and genius. And then how can you actually begin to activate your unique gifts and share those in a world that actually creates such value? It's the highest value you can provide, so that if you're providing your highest value in the world and transforming lives, then there is a divine exchange of value to you. You're actually meant to prosper from sharing your gifts and genius, to receive value in return at a level worthy of what you're sharing in the world. So it's what Marianne Williamson calls the law of divine compensation, right? Is that when we share our divine gifts, we're meant to be supported, sustained, even abundant. And it is a win-win-win, because we're helping others do the same. So that's what I share in the workshop. And I also share an additional gift that you'll receive after the workshop. It's called the 3 Shifts Cheat Sheet. I know we don't usually, Steve, encourage people to cheat, but it's meant cheat sheet, like a short version, a 1-page summary of what you learned in the workshop. So it's a really the workshop and the gift are really valuable, and I'm glad to share those.
So in the Signature Genius Workshop, Julianne, and what is the fee for that course?
There's no fee for the workshop. It's free. I'm just providing it to you, and then and the cheat sheet, because I want all of us to tap into this. At the end of the workshop, I actually have made a few set aside some time to talk to a few H-teamers if they want to talk to me personally about finding their own personal genius in a deeper way than shared in the workshop. So they'll have the opportunity to do that, but there's no fee at all. I'm just providing it as a benefit to all humanities teamers.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
and love and namaste. And Julianne, just, again, going back to stories, just some of the people that have gone through that program. You brought in one story earlier. Any other story that you'd bring in that where you really saw the light switch come on there in a powerful way?
There is, and you know what strikes me though, Steve, if you would allow me to, I seem to be kind of thinking about a pattern that I see more than a particular person that I think would be helpful to people, everyone listening, and that is all of our visionaries have tremendous gifts, and one thing that I share in the workshop is that is a bit counterintuitive, is that even though you have these gifts, you're the one with them, you possess them, actually you may be the least likely to recognize them and to recognize their value initially. Okay, well, why is that? Well, first of all, because your gifts and genius are something you've been doing your whole life, right? So it's kind of like the example I give in the workshop. It's kind of like we see a fish swimming underwater, and we say, how can a fish breathe underwater? And the fish is going, what water? Right? It's just always been there, right? I don't see it, right? And so you may be familiar with that. I think most of us are. Is like somebody will come up to you and say, oh my gosh, Steve, I don't even see how do you do that? And you're like, what? I've been doing that since I was born. Exactly. Those are some of your gifts that you may not be seeing. And so the other thing is that we don't always value them then. We think, well, if it comes easily to me, then there can't be much value to it, right? Because only things that we have to work really, really hard at are worthy of value. Well, that's not true either, right? If it's something that you're amazing at and other people see that you're amazing at, and they're saying, I don't even see how you do that, then you might take note. In fact, that's one of the keys I wanted to share today is listen to what others say to you, right? And are astonished that you can do. And give it more than a grain of salt, right? They're reflecting back to you where you shine. And then begin to step into owning that genius, not from a place of ego, but from a place of divinity. These gifts were given to you. Why? To hide them? No, to share them, right? To share them. And so if there's any voice outside of you, inside of you that's saying, don't share your divine gifts, that voice of judgment is actually lying to you. Because the highest voice, the highest authority that there is, the divine source, gave you these gifts to share them. So any voice that's telling you, discouraging you, telling you, who are you to do this? There are others out there sharing similar things. Nobody's out there sharing it exactly like you. Nobody's got your exact message.
Boy, so, that is. So
go ahead.
I want to say too, Julianne, what I really appreciate here is, there are a lot of teachings that are like The Secret, that are just focused on manifesting, abundance for ourselves and our family. And it's true that there are universal laws that we can use to do that. But you're bringing back in again and again the divine, the divinity that is within each person, and the process for not only manifesting prosperity and financial abundance and things that serve our family, but that serve our community and our neighborhood, that serve our world as well, which is what divinity does. When you're fusing these two, it's what we naturally do when we walk through that door and become conscious, isn't it? So yes, of course, create prosperity that's going to nurture our family, but we see that our true self is really the world around us, and so we're putting ourselves in service to the world around us, and that's what your work is about, right? Both.
That's it, and Steve, that's it. And we're all if we're in our divine purpose, we're all in service to this truth, right? From different aspects, we're all sharing that. We need everyone, right? We need all of us sharing it. And so the question is not, how dare you share this? The question is, how dare you not share with us what you can bring? And I just want to encourage everyone, you do have gifts, valuable gifts and genius to share. Start by asking those around you. You may be amazed at what you hear, and start listening and start owning that. And I encourage you to come and experience the Signature Genius Workshop at mydivinegenius.com. There'll be a lot more explanation there, a lot more guidance for you. It'll be a great jumping off point, literally a jumping off point for you sharing your genius in the world.
Yeah, again, thank you. mydivinegenius.com. It's a free workshop that Julianne's offering to all of the Humanities Team community, and it's awesome. Let me bring in some comments here from listeners too. Bill in New York says, I love this. I'm more powerful than I believe. This is so empowering. So, wow, thank you, Bill, for bringing that in. That's the whole objective behind this program, is to really bring in what is so, and invite everybody to really step into it and live it fully. Not just we're in a safe container here in this hour-long program, but the whole objective is for the rest of our lives to really step into this and live it fully. With our kids, with our spouse, in our community, globally. There's a question here from Michelle here, Julianne, and she says regarding biblical reference for this work where we're sharing our talents. And I think that might have come from earlier at the very beginning, Julianne. You were sharing you've done research and homework into a sacred text, and that uncovered kind of a lot of what these teachings were going to be about for you. Are there particular things you might want to share here?
That's such a great question, Michelle. And I want to say that there are so many rich resources out there in every religion. In my book series, Genesis of Genius, that's one of the beautiful things that I was able to capture, is from every single religion, the same kinds of truths about sharing our gifts, about who we are in the world, about how we are one with all creation. And the same threads of truth, what Aldous Huxley calls the perennial philosophy, right, is that it runs through, those threads run through all philosophy and religion, and you start to see those patterns. So you see them in the Bible, in the New Testament. You see them in the Quran. You see them throughout all belief systems, even some you may never have heard of. So there are lots of references in my book. Just, it's one of those books, Steve, you know, I'm amazed today. So many books don't even have an index or any kind of, you know, reference section. Mine is like very thick. So if you're really interested in a lot of references and great books and great reference books for universal religions and themes, they're all there. And then if you just take a text, if you just took the New Testament and just did a search for gifts and talents, you would find so many scriptures that just reinforce to you, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to discover your gifts. You're supposed to be sharing them. And it says each one of us has been given these gifts, right, to share them. So you'll be reinforced and encouraged and reminded, yeah, that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. That's our purpose here.
Yes, it is. Okay, and that's mydivinegenius.com. It's a free workshop. There's a link in the window here. And somebody, Michelle, comes in and shares, it's all about living from our souls. And yes, absolutely right. Our soul is that. We talk about divine essence. Of course, you know, heart and soul is where it's based. There's a question here from M. White that says, my ministry and career is focused on mindful, meaningful work that is more about contributions than just compensation. How does genius fit into this? And Julie, you might go. I'm going to also come in. There's something in the humanities team I want to talk about related to this, but Julianne, please.
Okay, just to start off, Steve, and I'll make sure to let you pick up too. I love that you use the word ministry, because when you're in your divine purpose, it is a ministry. It may not necessarily be related to a church or a synagogue or anything like that. It is your divine walk in the world. It's your divine sharing in the world. Now, because I work with visionaries across the globe, and they all have both tend to have create a business out of this, right? How they're sharing their content and their work in the world. Many of them write books, do workshops, speak. It's what I call creating their unified body of work around their genius. And they also have, almost all of them, a higher calling, a higher vision. They may be creating some kind of center for education. I just talked the other day to a woman in Swaziland who is building an eco center, and I helped contribute to a bridge that's going across this river there. Because when I found out about it, I was like, okay, I've got to help you build this bridge, because you got to have, you've got to be able to do this for both sides. So the funding for these kinds of creations, like community creations, there's a divine there's a divine strategy and compensation for that too, for ways of funding those things. There are new ways now for funding, crowdfunding, those kinds of things that we see, so we can be innovative about that. But we also have to make sure, and this is key, for those visionaries who are leading these efforts, that there are streams of income that, whether through donations or many other forms that you would create for funding, grants and things, that you are sustained, because your vision is not going to survive if you aren't sustained. So we built this in from the very beginning, that the vision is funded and the purpose is delivered, the transformation is delivered to those you're serving, but also that you're being served and sustained by this work. Otherwise, what we find is so much in our nonprofit and giving communities that people actually burn out, or their visions or their organizations don't survive because they haven't got the flows of sustainability mapped out as clearly as the giving. It's got to be a cycle of giving and receiving, and nothing wrong with receiving, right? You've got to have that divine cycle, or you can't continue.
Yes, I love that too, as you're describing this, Julianne, and sharing that the people that are going through this process, there's a mission. You said ministry, it doesn't have to be theological. So we're talking about ministry. It can even just be social purpose, but it's about just nurturing, giving back, creating a better neighborhood, a better community globally. It's part of what being conscious means, because we see that our true self is the world around us, that we are all one. And we have a divine essence, and we become in service to that. It's just what naturally happens. Let me I mentioned I'd come in behind you on this. I want to talk about this Conscious Business Alliance, because it goes right in white at this question that you ask, where you talk about where it's about more than just compensation. And back in 2014, with 3 other NGOs, one in Europe, one in Japan, and another one in the United States, we created something called the Conscious Business Declaration. And I invite you to go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org, or the Humanities Team website, and pull down the Conscious Business menu. You see the declaration, but you'll also see a lot of classes there. There's something called Inspired Practices. There's a training and certification program for people that want to become conscious business change agents. And you all probably know we're a nonprofit. Humanities Team is a nonprofit. We got into this area of conscious business because we need to bring the fullness of consciousness to business. Just as there's a call to action to each of us individually now to self-select, to really live this in the way, and Julianne's providing all these incredible tools for really stepping into it and living it. Likewise, businesses need to become conscious. And consciousness includes an inner journey dimension and an outer transformation dimension. And the inner transformation dimension is what has been missing, where there's a spirit-guided process and collaboration, spirit-guided decision-making, a spirit-guided culture within the organization, so that the business is a mission first and then a business second. And that's what this whole Conscious Business Initiative is about. Again, you can check it out at consciousbusinessinitiative.org. Also, you can check it out at the Humanities Team website. Invite you to go there, sign the declaration if you get an inner yes. When you read the declaration, it's short. But also you might, on the Humanities Team website, check out some of these classes that are coming up, because there's just an incredible community of leaders that's coming in and who see it as their mission to bring in what we're talking about here, a ministry, a mission first to business that includes this inner transformation dimension, which is so important when we talk about what consciousness is. So I wanted to just bring those things in. There's a panelist, M. White, is coming back and thanking us for passion and expertise, guiding, coaching, consulting. So thank you, M. White. Thank you for coming in with your question there too. We've just got like a minute or two here, Julianne. And again, thank you for bringing in this this incredible opportunity. MyDivineGenius.com. It's where that free workshop is. Any last words or call to action, invitation here as we're wrapping up our program, Julianne?
Oh, thank you so much, Steve. It's been wonderful. It's gone by fast. It's been fun and also profound and practical. I guess a couple of quick thoughts that come to me. Number one, learn not to react to circumstances, to think about what you want to create. Okay, pause and ask, what was it that I really wanted to create? Okay, when you're faced with a problem. And then the second thing is that we can focus on our shared vision in organizations, in businesses, in our families, in our communities, at every level of creation. Focusing on our shared vision instead of our differences will make a tremendous change in our world.
Amen. Our shared vision, and that's something that naturally happens too, this larger self where we just value and love the diversity, but we feel into the collective and how we can nurture it and serve it. So beautiful. Julianne, thank you so much. What an incredible hour. Just fantastic here being with you. I know we're putting on the screen the ways that people can connect with you. MyDivineGenius.com is the thing we're inviting people to check out. Julianne, I'm going to come back and thank you some more, but at least that gets us started. You all may want to just grab a pen because I'm going to go through some important announcements of things that are like just around the corner. One is we're in October. We're now at October 5, and Global Oneness Day, which is our biggest event of the year in Humanities Team, is just around the corner. It's on Tuesday, October 24th. It's free. There's over 12 hours of programming. For the first time this year, it's all in video. And if you miss any part of Global Oneness Day, we're going to send out links if you register so that you can watch these incredible programs with Michael Beckwith and Panache Desai and Marianne Williamson and all the people, many of them from around the world that are real leaders in this space. They've all volunteered their time. They've all come in to this incredible conversation about oneness. We call it our Earth Day for an awakened humanity. If you go to globalonenesssummit.org, globalonenesssummit.org, or just Google Global Oneness Day, you'll see all the amazing speakers and panels that day, Tuesday, October 24th. Invite you to go there and register, and there's some little free gifts as kind of a fun thing when you register as well. This year, we're doing something unique is to create Global Oneness Day year-round. We've partnered with Barbara Marx Hubbard to create something called Awakening the New Species Within You. It's a program that starts a couple weeks after Global Oneness Day. We'd like to invite you to go to this site. It's called awakennewspecies.com, awakennewspecies.com, and there's some free video journals there on the website that you can load down from Barbara, where she talks about awakening that new species within us and really living it. And also there's some free webinars coming up that you'll get registered for. So if you go to awakennewspecies.com, you'll get those gifts. I mentioned that Humanities Team is a member of this Conscious Business Alliance with these other NGOs. That's at consciousbussinessdeclaration.org and at humanitiesteam.org that you can learn more about that. Some upcoming programs that you don't want to miss. This Saturday, so just today's Thursday, just in a couple of days, on the Global Oneness Day site, so that's globalonenesssummit.org. If you go there after 9 o'clock Pacific time, that's Los Angeles time, there's going to be a program that we're playing all day on Saturday. It's with Craig Hamilton, who's just a really beautiful leader that's created something called Integral Enlightenment. So when we talk about unity consciousness and really stepping into it, living it fully, Craig is a real master teacher at that. And on Saturday, the 7th, after 9 a.m. Pacific time, you can, from the Global Oneness Day site, you can watch that 30-minute interview where I caught up with Craig to chat with him. So then some other programs that are coming up a week from today, on Thursday the 12th, I'm going to be with Gay and Katie Hendricks, and they talk about oneness and two-ness is what they call it. So their particular focus is relationships, conscious relationships. So the secrets that make love last in a conscious relationship. So really cool. Gay and Katie Hendricks, we love being with them. We do a program only once a year with them. So that's Thursday next week at the same time, 9 o'clock Pacific time. And then on Thursday the 19th, which is a week later, I'm with another very special guest, Kenji Kimura, who also has incredible programs for living in oneness. So you don't want to miss that. That's at 9 o'clock Pacific time. If you go to livinginone.com, you can register for all of these programs. They're all free. And just like Global Oneness Day, if you miss the live program, if you register, we send out links so that you can watch the free program later at your leisure. So this program is focused on living in oneness. So we want to invite you to something called Community Circle. It's only $10 a month, and it's for people that are living in oneness all over the world consciously. All of our programs for the last several years are available to people that are part of Community Circle. So there are over 350 now videos and audio links to these programs, Global Oneness Day, etc. And they're available to you and your family, 7x24. So you can listen to them at your leisure. And there's also a book club, and there's a private Facebook page and other things that are available to that community too. If you go to humanitiesteam.org and just come down to the rectangle that says Community Circle, you can learn more. I think we're putting a link in the window as well, and that's only $10 a month. Okay, and we're going to wrap up here. Thank you, Julianne Turner. Thank you. Just such incredible wisdom and presence and just heartful energy Thank you, Julianne Turner, for being with us.
You're so welcome, Steve. It's been such a joy.
mydivinegenius.com, this free workshop that you're offering to the humanities team community. Thank you. I also want to thank my partners and colleagues here. Garth Catterall is the guy that leads these programs each week. Thank you, Garth. He's off camera. Nanette Kennedy, D. Mark, Caroline Chang are some of the people that help also. And then thank you to each of you, the viewers who come here each week to participate. Thank you for prioritizing this to be part of your day. And in closing, we want to invite all of us to really live as one. Of course, we're all going to do this each in our own way. Our invitation is just to live it authentically, and this whole peace and presence and power are ours. The thing that Julianne and I have been talking about here for the hour. Okay, I'll see you Thursday next week with Gay and Katie Hendricks at 9 o'clock Pacific time. And have a great week, everybody. Thanks again, Julianne.
Blessings.
Love and thanks. Blessings. Thanks, everybody.